I've seen the question start to come around again. Is it time to retire Spider-Man? Is it time for Spider-Man to kind of have his last big adventure as Peter Parker, hang up the boots, and then hand the character off to someone else? As there's nothing left to do with Spider-Man. This seems to come up from time to time with all characters, whether it's Batman or Captain America or Superman or anyone else. This idea of like, we've told all the stories we can possibly tell. We got nothing else left in the tank. Let's call it a day and put give it to somebody else, and then we'll be fine. Well, there's a couple of problems with that, but I want to really get into is are we done with Spider-Man? Has Spider-Man done everything he can do? Hey, everybody, this is Perch. Spider-Man is a character, of course, has been around for a very long time. We're talking 60 years now. Is that right? 60, yeah, 60 years, roughly, a little bit less than that. Spider-Man's been in comics and has had many adventures, and the majority of that time, I think, if you could kind of do a pie chart of the different status quo elements of his life, we had, Parker as the kind of lovable loser, had a job at the Daily Bugle, barely making ends meet. Um, you know, Kind of just hanging in there, going to college and then out of college, but just kind of you know trying to balance superhero life and single life. And then we had the Spider-Man married to Mary Jane era, where they got married in the '80s, I believe. Yeah, in the '80s, and then that lasted for a little over 10 years, where we had a couple, kind of a odd couple type relationship, and then everything else gets to be pretty kind of tiny little slices. The Dan Slott run felt in many ways, if you take the big picture look of it, kind of ADHD level of writing Spider-Man. He was kind of back to his lovable loser self, but then he was a tech mogul, and then he was a fraud, and before that he was on Doctor Octopus, and there was a lot of rapid little elements there. And now we've got Spider-Man kind of once again in a holding pattern. He's dating Mary Jane, but he's kind of doing his thing. And the question has come up more recently of I don't know if there's more stories to tell with Spider-Man. And I think, I'll give the same answer I always give to that question. There's always more stories to tell with all of these people if you've got good stories to tell. And I do believe those good stories are out there. I don't think they're impossible. I don't think they fall out of the sky, but then I guess, does any story just kind of fall out of the sky? Is there a comic that you could just be put on and you'll have great sales and you don't even need to really think about what you're doing? Is there anything like that in existence? I don't think there is. I don't think there's a sure bet comic. I think you pretty much still have to bring to the table some kind of quality story, or nothing's really going to happen for you. And that's, in a nutshell, I think that's where the whole thing goes. I think Spider-Man has problems in the sense that they kept him kind of stuck in a single status quo, and then they said, well, let's take a big move forward. We're gonna get him married, and they got him married. And then it's like somebody seems to think, wow, been doing the same thing with Spider-Man for a long time. Quick, we got to change things. And then they went through a rapid kind of changing of Spider-Man. And in doing so, I think they burned through a lot of ideas really, really quickly. I think the idea of Peter Parker tech mogul Spider-Man is one, as I recall, that came after Secret Wars, and we didn't really know how he did it. It's like he was just kind of hanging out, and then we had Secret Wars, and 6 months later, he's super rich, and he bought the Baxter Building and all the rest. And then did it even last? I don't know if that status quo even lasted 1 year before it was back to, I'd say we're going to give him some bad luck, send him back into loser territory. And I think you could have built to Parker being a successful tech mogul. I think you could have taken a decade to do that, and it probably would have been pretty cool for his character. The idea that, hey, actually he's not Tony Stark smart, but he's able to put some engineering together, and he's personable. He's got that kind of humble quality that people go for, and then we can draw some kind of cult personality around him, and that would be kind of cool. And then he could question if it's better for him to put on the tights and save the world of Spider-Man, or if he's doing more help for the world, kind of as a as a tech guru. That would have been a storyline you could have done, and I think it might have been interesting. But it would have only worked if you took a lot of time getting there, like show Parker on a path to success, and him not really knowing how to deal with his success since he's had so many setbacks in his life, and then maybe that's how you reintroduce Mary Jane to say, look, it takes two to be successful, and I mean, there's a lot of ways you could have done it, but I think whether it's Batman or it's Superman or it's Captain America or whoever else, I think there's this constant temptation to say, there's nothing else we can do with this character. Let's just dump him, retire the character, bring in somebody new. Now's the time for Sam Wilson to come up and be Captain America, or Miles Morales to be Spider-Man, or whatever, Luke Fox to be Batman, whatever you're happening to do. The problem is when you do that, invariably, because they've done these things before, they wind up telling the same stories just with different people. They don't actually get to that new status quo. They've just changed the appearance and name of the guy in the title role, and then they're having him go back and doing the same crap over and over again. And so in that sense, I think nothing gets really accomplished. In the past, when they did the bold new status quo of Dick Grayson being Batman, Dick Grayson was going out, had Robin. It was a different dynamic. I think Grant Morrison did a perfectly fine job writing a lot of that, but it still was, he was fighting some of the weird Gotham villains, and there's a lot of the same beats. It wasn't necessarily a truly new status quo. It wasn't like you had Frank Miller coming into Daredevil and doing something radically new with the character. You just, changed the individual and then proceeded to do the same stuff. And I think we've seen enough of Miles Morales in his own title to suggest that if Marvel ever decided to get the idea of, like, let's retire Peter Parker and, call it a day, and Miles will take on the role, Miles would then be facing, now Miles gets to face, Dr. Octopus, and Miles gets to face, the new and improved Green Goblin. And then here's Miles is about to be found out his secret identity, but he's got to hide it. And so I think, if you're going to do the bold new direction, if you're going to change things, I think you have to really understand what change actually means and go through with it, not just say, hey, we're going to change the lead character, but do everything else exactly the same. To the majority of your readers, that's not change at all. I think there's a lot of room to go with Spider-Man. I think there's been some huge missteps, but in many ways that provides a bit of an opportunity. It provides us a chance to say, hey, with all these missteps that we've made, here's how we make them make sense again. Here's how we go back and we actually repair it so it tells a more cohesive story for the character. Here's how, here's how Spider-Man gained his fortune and lost it over the course of like a year. Here's how that all makes sense. It's tough to be the person going and cleaning up a lot of that crap, but at different times people have done it. Peter David's done it in his runs. I think Hickman's done it in his. There's been a lot of that kind of stuff. But I'm always suspicious whenever I hear the angle, well, we've done everything that we can do with that character. There's nothing left to do with that character. To me, that's always shorthand for we have no idea what we're doing, and it's just too hard to come up with stories. So we're doing this lightweight cosmetic change in the hopes that you will, ignore that and be fooled and just kind of go along with whatever kind of crazy thing we've done. Will you please? That's always what it feels like. But what about you? Is there a case, first of all, is Spider-Man done? Have we seen everything we can possibly see with Spider-Man? Is it time to bring in Cindy Moon and and break her the new Spider-Man and just call it a day for old Peter Parker? What would you do if you were on the Spider-Man book to kind of liven it up, freshen it up, make it exciting? It's weird that people are saying this, by the way, when Nick Spencer came onto the title and had a pretty successful first issue, and a lot of people thought, hey, this is a pretty good Spider-Man run. It's weird to me, and we're in the midst of this Kindred thing that's been built up now for 50 issues. It's weird to me that now we're out of ideas. Like, why? How, I mean, it's a pretty damning indictment of this guy's run that I thought most people kind of liked. I don't know. What would you do? What would you do if you're in Spider-Man? And what do you think? Is there ever a case where a character truly is out of stories, out of ideas? There's nothing left to be done, and it's time to just pack it in. What is an example of that? I guess Watchmen. which they continue, they continue to go back and tip into that well. But like Watchmen as a property, it's like we told that story. Do we need to tell more out of it? I mean, there are more stories could be told, but is that a good idea? Maybe not. I don't know. I've just complicated the problem. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications if you want to be notified. Follow me on social media. Send me an email at comics with an S, perch at gmail.com. And thanks for listening. And I'm always curious who's listening at this point. Do you get all the way to the end? Let me know that too.